Now to stunning allegations of a cover-up in the police killing of a black man in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, 5 days ago. The family of Andrew Brown Jr. and their lawyers blasting police officials after only allowing them to view 20 seconds of the body cam video today.
One body cam, 20 seconds, and an execution.
20 seconds is not transparency when you got multiple officers gunning down a man with his hands on the steering wheel and trying to get away.
We do not feel that we got transparency. They determined what was pertinent. They wanted to have just the two family members see the video with no legal counsel.
The police claim Brown was shot outside his home while they were attempting to serve a warrant for felony drug charges. Here's one of the family's attorneys and Brown's son describing what the video was like.
Andrew had his hands on his steering wheel. He was not reaching for anything. He wasn't touching anything. Sat there in his vehicle with his hands on the steering wheel while being shot at. He was trying to evade being shot. So he backs out, not forward, but backs out away from the officers who still shooting at him. They were still shooting at him after the car had already crashed into a tree.
My dad got executed just by trying to save his own life. You know, he was not in the officers was not in no harm of him at all.
Brown's death certificate categorizes his death as a homicide. Activists and protesters now calling for the full release of the video to the public.
When I say, what do you want? You say video. What do you want? 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 Video.
Jason, I wanted to talk to you because I want to connect what we saw today to what is happening in the country at large. I mean, this is happening in the context of a national reckoning around police reform. And what I wondered watching that press conference today is that if there is not enough urgency now to reckon with police reform at the federal level, then when will there ever be?
There won't be. And I want to give credit to my friend and an excellent lawyer, Bakari Sellers, because what he said there in profane, non-FCC approved language is very telling. Okay? Because think about this. If the police are willing to say that to the lawyer representing the family after a man has been shot, how do you think they treat people on a regular basis? How do you think they treat people when there aren't cameras there? How do you think they treat people who might be less educated, less confident, and much more frustrated? I'm happy to see that some Democrats and some Republicans vaguely are talking about police reform. I have made it clear that I think we need to abolish policing as it currently exists. I don't think you can reform some of the problems that we've seen. But if they don't do something now, if they don't do something in this moment, we're not only going to recognize that really people don't care, right? Because if you're not willing to do something now, then you don't really care about police systematically and consistently shooting African Americans. You're also saying that you don't care about black voters. If you look at these numbers, these shootings of African Americans, they don't correlate to crime. They don't correlate to income. They don't correlate to resources. They only seem to correlate to race. The people that police are most likely to cuss at, shoot, and kill are actually African American women of higher income. The second largest group is African American men who are extremely poor. So it has nothing to do with resources. It has to do with whether we have a government that cares about this issue and the consistent abuse of black people.
So given that framework, what do you expect to hear from Biden on Wednesday about this issue specifically? And I also wonder if you think you're going to hear from Tim Scott in the Republican response.
So I think first with Joe Biden is not, he's going to say something very clear. We're not going to defund the police. We're not going to abolish the police. He's going to say those things because I think he needs to say those things politically. Joe Biden and I think all too many Democrats think that this is a simple issue of throwing more money at the problem. You cannot simply throw more money at the problem. Currently, the George Floyd Policing Act, which is a great start, it talks about collecting information. It talks about getting rid of qualified immunity. But that wouldn't have prevented somebody like Derek Chauvin from doing what he did to George Floyd. It wouldn't have. We just would have been collecting information after people die. That's why I've suggested adding things like decertification to the George Floyd Policing Act, which means that if you're a police officer with a license and you're found to have engaged in some terrible behavior, even if you haven't been convicted, we can snatch your license away, just like we can do with a bad teacher, a bad nurse, a bad lawyer, or a bad insurance agent. We need proactive policy from Joe Biden, not talking about ways to collect the abuse that we already know is happening.
And how about Tim Scott? What are you going to hear from him?
I'm sorry?
I want to know what you think you're going to hear from Tim Scott on this question.
Oh, yes. And Tim Scott, look, Tim Scott has already said, he said this in the interview last year with Vox. Tim Scott says qualified immunity, getting rid of it, is a non-starter for him. Tim Scott is the guy who said, I think God made me a Republican and a conservative black man in order so I can make a moment in these kinds of times. I don't think Tim Scott's going to offer much of anything. Most of what the Republican Party has been saying is we need to collect more data and we need to give more money to police officers. And it's a difficult job. And black people need to learn how to follow directions, even though it's this terrible, horrible game of Simon Says where police tell black people to do things and shoot them anyway. I don't expect much from Tim Scott. Now, what he may do legislatively, I do think he is a Republican that Democrats can talk to, but his attack on Joe Biden is just going to be that. He's going to say that the speech doesn't accomplish anything. He's going to say it's terrible left-wing nonsense, and he's going to say it's an attack on the police. Tim Scott publicly is always a cheerleader for the hard right of the Republican Party, even if privately he is occasionally a reasonable person when it comes to policy.
All right, Jason Johnson, I appreciate you sticking around for us. Thanks so much.